So I want to tell you a therapy horror story. 4 years ago, when I moved to Ohio from Connecticut, I had to switch therapists because the therapist I love and adored and who was awesome and aspec friendly could not serve me in Ohio. So I had to go through this process, and I am still in this process 4 years later of trying to find a really good therapist. I went to this one guy, and I will admit that I did not really do my homework in this case, which was my first mistake. So we were in the intake session, and I'm explaining my situation, I'm explaining my relationships, and I'm explaining myself. I'm explaining I am an asexual person, I am in these relationships, I'm ace but sex favorable, and here are the things I'd like to work on in therapy. And this therapist stopped me and was like, so you're asexual, but you say that you're sex favorable. What does that mean? Red flag. I explained what sex favorable meant. I explained that it meant that sex is a part of my relationships, even though I am asexual. And he said to me, well, it seems to me that you maybe don't understand what asexual means. Now, look, I don't like to be full of myself, but sir, I think I would know what asexual means. And this happened maybe 5 minutes into the therapy session. He was telling me that I didn't know who I was and didn't understand my own identity that I write about and teach about. And what a painful hour of an intake session. It was awful. I never saw that therapist again, of course. And every time I reflect on that story, it makes me think of just how hard it is for us to sometimes find a therapist that is a good fit for us. So today in this video, let's talk about strategies we can use to find a really good therapist when you're ace or aro. So before we dive into the process and strategies, I just want to start with a framing idea. While the reasons we go into therapy may not always revolve around our aspec identity, having a therapist that is aspec-affirming is a really valuable tool. Even if you're not dealing with being aspec, having someone sitting there with you, in relationship with you, working through certain problems, having a person who understands your identity, understands your lived experience, respects it, and makes space for it, really makes that process so much more successful. Remember, yeah, you're paying your therapist, but this is still a relationship you're developing. And when we think about relationships in other parts of our lives, we know that those relationships can't really succeed unless they are aspec affirming. The same thing really applies for your therapist. What we know happens when aspec people are in therapy sessions with therapists who don't understand them or don't validate their identities, you tend to maybe hide things or not disclose things or work around the truth of your life. And, as soon as you start doing those workarounds, you're not getting the most out of therapy. Now let's get into the strategies. Do your research. If you want to ensure your success in finding an aspec inclusive therapist, that work begins before you even reach out to anyone. So here are 2 strategies you can use to make the research part more successful. First, when you are able, use inclusive therapy directories. So many of us are doing our research on therapy providers online, and we sort of tend to get lost in those big giant ones that just group everybody together across all specialties and all whatever. They can kind of be really overwhelming. But there are a number of inclusive therapist directories out there that can help you make a better, more tailored decision for you. I'm going to include some links to some of those directories in the description of the video. But using these directories is great. You know from the jump that the people you find there are going to be conversant in the thing that you care about and the thing that's important to you. They will have experience. These folks know the thing that matters to you. If you are using some of those big giant therapy directories that everybody uses, like on Psychology Today, make sure that you are using the keywords that will narrow down your search. For me, I am always making sure that LGBTQ+ is part of my search for therapists. A therapist that says that they work with LGBTQ+ clients, that puts them above someone who does not. Now, from experience, I will say, just because they include that information in the big directory doesn't mean that they're going to be a really good aspec inclusive therapist. It just means you get to narrow your options down to make your search a little more effective. I have run into plenty of therapists who say they work with LGBTQ clients, but the reality is they work with them terribly. Still, Making sure your directory searches are tailored either through use of an inclusive directory or through using the specific keywords that matter to you, that's going to help you find someone who is going to be a good fit for you. The second tactic is to check out their websites. On all of these directories, you can find links, if they have a website of their own, to their website about their practice and what they're all about. Those websites tend to provide a little more detailed information about the therapist and gives you some vibes about your therapist. And I'll admit, when I visit some of these websites, the information is generally pretty cookie cutter, right? They're just sort of telling the very basic marketing stuff that explains their practice and explains what it is they do and what they bring to the table as a therapist. However, you can still get some pretty strong vibes from how someone sets up their website, what they choose to share, what parts of their personal life are included there. And you know what? Vibes are important, right? Vibes are important. We talked earlier about therapy relationships being another relationship in your life. So think about visiting their websites as though you're like swiping through Tinder profiles on therapists, right? When you're on Tinder or any of the dating apps, vibes count, and you listen to your vibes from someone. Listen to your vibes when it comes to the websites. But doing these two things in the research process can help you narrow the field down to a number of options that will work best for you. You're not just like tossing out into the dark and hoping something sticks. You're narrowing your focus down by using these strategies. Reaching out. Now that you've narrowed down the field of potential therapists, it's time to start reaching out. And here are some strategies to keep that part of the process aspec-affirming. First, make sure you have more than one option. You don't want to put all of your eggs in one therapy basket. You want to make sure that at the reaching out stage, you are sending inquiries to a handful of people, a handful of potential matches for you. Finding the right fit isn't the only consideration here. They may not have space in their schedule. The space in their schedule may not work with yours. There may be something you find out in the initial email exchanges that isn't going to vibe with you. You want to make sure that you don't have to go back to the drawing board and start the process all over again. Cast your net a little bit wider than just like one person that your fingers crossed for. In your initial inquiry email, you want to make sure that you are very specific about what you are looking for in a therapist. Now, you may be hearing that and going like, well, yeah, of course. Thank you, Cody. Genius. But there's a particular way that I've begun doing that, the saying what I want specifically, that I have found to be really helpful and empowering. Instead of laying out all of my life story in that inquiry email, talking about the specifics of my life through the lens of talking about myself, I am writing about the qualifications I want them to have as a therapist. So instead of explaining to a therapist that I'm asexual and I'm in a polyamorous relationship and I'm sex favorable, instead of explaining those things through the lens of I am this, I'm saying I am looking for a therapist that has experience with aspec clients. I am looking for a therapist that has experience with polyamory. I'm looking for a queer affirming therapist. That may seem like a fiddly distinction, but I think it's a really important one. It puts the ball in their court to look at their qualifications and determine whether they are an appropriate fit for us. It's not them deciding whether we are an appropriate story for them to deal with. We are asking, these are qualifications I need. Do you have those qualifications? And as a bonus, you're not sharing your whole life story in the inquiry email. Another thing you can do if you are willing to do so, because it's a sort of a bold question, is ask directly how your potential therapist identifies. Do they identify as queer? Do they identify as trans or non-binary? Like, ask how they identify. I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to find a therapist who has lived experiences that either relate or resonate with you, or that you feel comfortable being in a room with or being on Zoom with and sharing really personal things about yourself. Asking how they identify, and if they give you an answer, that gives you more information on whether or not this person will be a good fit for you, and if they have certain lenses that will help make the work together easier. Hey there, are you enjoying the video? Well, you can thank these folks. My Patreon subscribers chose the topic of this video, and as subscribers, they get a lot of other stuff too. patrons-only videos, YouTube previews, access to the ASTAD book club, and a whole lot more. So you should consider joining them. The link is in the description. The intake session. So once you finally set up a first appointment with someone, there are a few things that you should bring into that intake session that will help you get the right vibes and get the information you need to know if this is a person you want to continue building that therapeutic relationship with. First, take advantage of the opportunity to ask specific questions about their experience. Remember, this isn't just about you sharing all your personal stuff. This is also an opportunity for you to get to know them better. And you have the right and space to ask specific questions about how they've been trained and what they know. You can ask questions. Have you worked with aspec clients before? Have you gone through training about aspec identities? Remember, this is not you auditioning. You are trying to find someone who's going to do good work with you. And finding out what they know, the experience they've had, the training they've had, and whether or not this is something that is a part of their practice otherwise, valuable information to know. Secondly, don't go into teacher mode instinctively. Look, I think we all do this, right? When we are meeting new people and we are talking about our aspec identities, we can go into teacher mode, right? We want to explain things for them when they're kind of confused and they don't understand stuff. Don't do that in the first therapy session. I recommend explaining your life as though you are explaining it to another aspec person who understands everything. That approach provides some interesting information. If they are curious and are asking questions, that tells you something about that therapist. If they understand you, that tells you something about that therapist. You'll also learn a lot based on the questions they're asking you. Is this curiosity one that is tinged with judgment? Are they slipping in subtle microaggressions as part of the questions they ask? You'll learn a lot about what they know and understand and think about aspec lives from the questions they ask. Now, once questions happen, yeah, sure, go into teacher mode and explain things, but from the beginning, try to hold off on that. Give them an opportunity to show you either A, they understand things, or B, can approach something they don't understand with the right kind of respectful, generous, care-filled curiosity. And finally, in this first intake session, be honest and vulnerable. I think it's very important for us as aspec people when we are going to be talking about our lives and the specifics of our aspec lives. In that beginning conversation, you want to be fully vulnerable. You want to be fully authentic. You want to show up as your full self. Sure, that's hard because we don't want to encounter someone like I encountered who slapped me with an aphobic comment right from the top. But it's better for you to find out that someone is the wrong fit than to enter into a relationship that doesn't quite work because you didn't give them all the details up front. Remember, you can always just step away from a therapeutic relationship that isn't working for you. So be authentic, be honest, be vulnerable. Those decisions will pay off in the long run. So I hope all of these strategies are helpful in your search for finding a new therapist. And I want to leave you with one final thought. They are here to help you. So in this relationship, you are the one running the show. If things don't feel right, or if you're not getting the information you need, or the vibes are just wrong and you can't feel comfortable sharing things about your life, it's okay to move on because this is a relationship. And as we do for all of the other relationships in our lives, when a relationship does not meet our needs and does not nurture us and does not allow us to be our full authentic selves, we can walk away from them. And that's the same thing that's true here. So good luck. Go out there and find yourself an aspec-affirming therapist, and I'll see you in the next video. And as always, I'm glad you're here.